You think you're tough just because you hit the gym 3 times a week, do some half-decent bench presses, and post mirror selfies? Let me tell you something. You wouldn't last a single day as an athlete in ancient Greece. Forget your protein shakes and your stylish leggings. Back then, training started early, ended late. And guess what the uniform was? None. That's right, completely naked. And don't think it was all beach runs and yoga poses. No, my friend, we're talking about pancration, a brutal mix of MMA with literally no rules, where breaking bones, or even killing your opponent, wasn't exactly frowned upon. So before you start thinking you're the next Spartan because you did 10 push-ups today, get ready. In this video, I'm going to show you why you wouldn't even survive the warm-up of a real ancient Greek athlete. So you've just been born in ancient Greece around 500 BCE. Congratulations. Your chances of surviving infancy are already questionable. About 25% of your fellow newborns won't make it past their first year. But don't worry, if you're obviously deformed or sickly, some city-states might just solve that problem by leaving you on a hillside to die of exposure. Particularly in Sparta, where they had a lovely little ravine called the Apothetai specifically for discarding defective babies. How thoughtful of them to have a designated spot. Your father is examining you carefully, looking for any sign of weakness. If you're a girl, there's already disappointment in the air, female Olympic athletes. Please, you're basically property now. But if you're a boy with a sturdy frame, there's hope you might one day bring glory to the family name in the Olympic Games. Spoiler, this won't end well for most of the hopefuls. Just because you survive the initial inspection doesn't mean you're destined for greatness. Your father will perform a ceremony called the amphidromia, carrying you around the hearth to officially welcome you into the family. At least you weren't left on a mountainside, so you've got that going for you. The Greeks believed that crying babies were being possessed by evil spirits, so whenever you wailed as an infant, your family might hang amulets around your neck or rub malodorous substances on your forehead to ward off these demons. Just imagine your mother smearing your face with garlic and olive oil concoctions while you're already upset. That'll definitely calm you down. Your cradle is probably a simple woven basket, and your toys are clay rattles filled with pebbles or knuckle bones from sheep. High-tech entertainment at its finest. Around age 7, if you're a boy with athletic potential, your real training begins. Your body will be scrutinized constantly. Are your limbs proportional? Is your chest broad enough? Are your leg muscles developing properly? Ancient Greeks were obsessed with the male form, which they considered the pinnacle of beauty and potential. The pressure starts early, kid. If you think modern Instagram body standards are rough, try growing up where your naked physique is literally the measure of your worth as a human being. And everyone will see it, because clothing is optional during training. Your diet is already being controlled. Hope you like barley bread, olive oil, and figs, because that's going to be your life for the foreseeable future. Meat is a rarity, saved for special occasions or sacrifices. You'll drink watered-down wine from a young age. Yes, even as a child, because the water supply isn't always trustworthy. The alcohol content helps kill bacteria, making it safer than plain water. So you're basically being given diluted booze as a health measure. If your modern helicopter parents could see this, they'd be having collective aneurysms. You're learning to swim in nearby rivers or the sea, not because it's fun, but because drowning is embarrassingly common and swimming isn't considered an Olympic event. It's just a basic survival skill. If you can't swim, you're considered uneducated. Literally, the Greeks had a saying, "He can neither swim nor read," to describe someone completely uncultured. You also get to play knucklebones, similar to jacks, and other games that develop hand-eye coordination. These aren't just for fun. They're evaluating your potential as a future athlete. By age 10, if you're showing promise, you'll be matched with a trainer called a pediatribes. This isn't the friendly coach who gives high fives and participation trophies. This man will use a stick called a rhabdos to correct your form whenever you make mistakes. Nothing motivates athletic excellence quite like the threat of public beating. You think your little league coach was tough? This guy considers bruises to be teaching tools. And he's watching you. Always watching you. Your potential Olympic career is already being mapped out based on your body type. Stocky and powerful, wrestling or boxing, tall and lean, running events, average but coordinated, maybe the pentathlon. There's no concept of finding your passion here. Your body determines your destiny, and your trainer's word is absolute law. If you think you can choose your own athletic path, that's adorable. The Greeks have already decided what you're good at based on your shoulder-to-hip ratio. The weather in Greece is brutal, scorching summers and chilly, damp winters, and you're training outdoors in all of it. There's no indoor facility with climate control, no moisture-wicking athletic wear, just your naked body being pushed to its limits in whatever elements the gods decide to throw at you that day. You're developing calluses everywhere, and your feet are perpetually cracked and hardened from running on rough ground. Beauty standards included these marks of athletic training. Soft, unblemished skin was for women and weaklings. You're already learning about the glory of the Olympics, how winners are practically elevated to divine status. The tales of past victors are your bedtime stories, filling your dreams with visions of olive wreaths and eternal fame. What they conveniently leave out is how many athletes die during training or competition, or how many are permanently injured, or how many dedicate their entire lives only to lose spectacularly. Those aren't the inspiring tales they share with impressionable young boys. The survival bias in these stories is off the charts. By the time you're approaching puberty, your entire childhood has been a preparation for athletic greatness. You haven't had time to develop other interests or skills. Your education has been physical first, with just enough literacy and numeracy to function in society. If you wash out of athletic training, you have few fallback options. The pressure is immense, and it's only going to get worse from here. Welcome to your glorified ancient Greek life, where your worth is measured by how well you can throw a discus or wrestle another naked man to the ground. This is supposedly the highlight of human civilization. Aren't you lucky to be born into it? Welcome to your Greek athletic education, where no pain, no gain isn't just a catchy modern slogan. It's the entire educational philosophy. Your day begins before dawn at the gymnasium, which comes from the Greek word gymnos, meaning naked. Yes, you'll be training in the nude. Every single day. Congratulations, you're now part of the world's first officially sanctioned naked workout club. Privacy? Body insecurity? These concepts don't exist here. Your physical flaws are on display for everyone. Trainers, fellow athletes, random old men who hang around to mentor young athletes, to critique mercilessly. The gymnasium isn't just a training facility. It's the center of your entire education. While aristocratic boys might receive lessons in music, mathematics, and rhetoric alongside their physical training, you as an aspiring Olympic athlete will focus almost exclusively on your body. Your classroom is a dusty courtyard where you'll practice wrestling, running, jumping, throwing, and boxing until you vomit, bleed, or both. If you think modern gym class is embarrassing, imagine doing burpees while completely naked as old men stand around discussing your muscle definition like your livestock at auction. Your trainer, the petatribes, carries a long, flexible rod at all times. This isn't for pointing at instructional diagrams. It's for striking you when your form is incorrect or your effort insufficient. Positive reinforcement hasn't been invented yet. The only feedback you'll receive comes in two forms: physical pain or slightly less physical pain. You think your high school coach was tough? This guy considers it a teaching failure if you don't leave practice with at least a few welts. The relationship between trainer and athlete is almost religious. You're expected to obey without question, as he supposedly embodies the wisdom of athletic tradition stretching back to mythical times. The concept of warming up exists, but not for injury prevention. It's to prepare your body for the olive oil rubdown. Yes, before training, you'll be thoroughly coated in olive oil by either yourself, a slave, or a junior trainer. This oil serves multiple purposes. It helps regulate body temperature, collects sweat and dirt that will be scraped off later with a curved metal tool called a strigil, and makes you slippery for wrestling. Just imagine being perpetually slick with oil, covered in dust, and scraped raw on a daily basis. Your skin is basically being seasoned like a cast iron pan. Your training regimen follows a 4-day cycle called the Tetris. Day 1 focuses on preparation, Day 2 on intense exertion, Day 3 on relaxation, and Day 4 on medium exertion. This cycle repeats endlessly, with no weekends off, no summer vacation, and certainly no mental health days. You've signed up, or more accurately, been signed up by your father, for a lifetime commitment. If you think this is bad, just wait until you learn about the specialized diets. Hope you like dry cheese and figs, because you'll be eating them until you either become an Olympic victor or die trying. Speaking of diet, yours is strictly controlled and, by modern standards, nutritionally questionable. Different events have different dietary requirements. Wrestlers and boxers eat huge quantities of meat, when available, to build mass, while runners and pentathletes follow a more moderate diet. If you're a heavyweight wrestler, you'll be force-fed to gain weight, sitting for hours each day, just stuffing your face. The ancient Greek version of a protein shake? Raw eggs mixed with wine. Delicious. And if you cheat on your diet? Public flogging awaits. Nothing helps athletic performance quite like shame and physical punishment. Your education includes learning the specific rules of your event, which are simultaneously simpler and more brutal than modern sports. In wrestling, for example, there are no weight classes. You could be paired against someone twice your size. Techniques that would be illegal in modern wrestling, like breaking fingers, are perfectly acceptable. Boxing has fewer rules than a street fight, with matches ending only when one competitor cannot continue or acknowledges defeat. The ancient Olympics weren't designed with athlete safety in mind. They were created to honor Zeus through displays of human suffering. I mean excellence. Beyond physical training, you're learning the complex social and religious aspects of athletic competition. The Olympics aren't just sporting events. They're sacred festivals honoring Zeus. You'll need to memorize prayers, purification rituals, and proper sacrificial procedures. Make a mistake in these religious protocols, and you've not only embarrassed yourself, but potentially angered the gods. No pressure, just your eternal soul and the agricultural fertility of your entire region at stake. You also learn the Olympic oath, sworn on slices of boar's flesh, promising to compete fairly. The penalty for breaking this oath? A hefty fine used to create a bronze statue of Zeus, called a zane, with your name inscribed on it as a permanent monument to your cheating. Ancient Greek version of the Wall of Shame. The psychological component of your training is intense. You're constantly reminded that only victory matters. Coming in second is just being the first loser. There are no silver or bronze medals in the ancient Olympics, no recognition for effort or personal bests. It's win or go home in disgrace. Your trainer uses everything from inspiring tales of past champions to outright psychological warfare to motivate you. Trash talking isn't just allowed. It's practically a required skill. You'll learn to intimidate opponents before matches even begin, making boastful claims about your prowess while denigrating theirs. Mental toughness isn't taught. It's beaten into you through daily humiliation and recovery. Injuries are not just common. They're expected milestones in your development. Dislocated shoulders, broken noses, cauliflower ears for wrestlers and boxers, stress fractures for runners. These aren't reasons to stop training, but badges of honor. Medical treatment is primitive at best. Herbal poultices, primitive splints, and the trainer's experienced hands to reset dislocations. Painkillers? Try wine or opium if you're lucky. Otherwise, bite down on a leather strap and think of Athens. You're learning to distinguish between pain you can train through and injuries that might actually kill you. This discernment is perhaps the most valuable skill you'll develop. Sexual politics at the gymnasium are complicated and, by modern standards, deeply problematic. Older men, called erasts, often select promising young athletes as their ereminos or beloved. This relationship is ostensibly mentorship, but frequently includes sexual components that today would land everyone in prison. You're navigating this complex social system while trying to focus on your athletic development. Rejecting unwanted advances could mean losing political patronage that might be crucial for your athletic career. If you think office politics are bad, try dealing with sexual politics while naked and covered in olive oil. By your late teens, if you've survived the training and shown exceptional promise, you might be selected to compete in the boys category at local games. This isn't like modern youth sports. You could be facing opponents several years older or younger than yourself, as age verification is non-existent. These preliminary competitions are your chance to attract attention from wealthy sponsors who might fund your Olympic journey. Without financial backing, you'll never afford the months of travel, special training, and equipment needed to compete at Olympia. Your athletic future depends not just on talent, but on your ability to become an ancient Greek sports influencer, minus the Instagram account. Your ability to self-promote is almost as important as your athletic prowess. Some things never change. As your formal education concludes, you've essentially been transformed into a specialized athletic machine with little knowledge of anything beyond your sport. You can perhaps read basic text, calculate simple figures, and recite some Homer, but your true education has been in pain tolerance, social manipulation, and religious ritual. Congratulations, you've completed the world's most brutal sports academy. Your prize? The opportunity to risk death or permanent disfigurement for a wreath made of olive branches. Still think you have what it takes to be an ancient Olympic athlete? The real fun hasn't even begun. Your day begins before dawn, when normal people are still enjoying their final moments of sleep. You rise to the crowing of roosters because alarm clocks won't be invented for another 2 millennia. Congratulations, you've already accomplished something impressive, waking up voluntarily at an hour when any reasonable person would roll over and go back to sleep. But there's no hitting snooze in ancient Greece. Your trainer has spies everywhere, and tardiness is punishable by public humiliation and extra laps around the gymnasium. Your morning ablutions are laughably primitive. Forget modern bathrooms with running water and fluffy towels. You'll splash water on your face from a basin, using olive oil instead of soap to cleanse your skin. That's right, you're washing oil with oil, which makes about as much sense as it sounds. After scraping it off with a strigil, your skin is technically clean but perpetually dried out and irritated. Dental hygiene consists of rubbing your teeth with a frayed wooden stick and rinsing with wine vinegar. Mouthwash this is not, and your breath will be memorable, to put it kindly. If you think this is bad, wait until you learn about ancient Greek toilet paper alternatives. Hint, it involves sponges on sticks shared by multiple users. Suddenly those 3 seashells from Demolition Man don't seem so confusing. Breakfast is a depressing affair by modern standards. A barley cake soaked in watered wine, perhaps with a handful of olives or figs if you're lucky. No coffee to jumpstart your day, no protein shake, not even a proper egg. Just carbs, weak alcohol, and the burning desire for Olympic glory to fuel your morning training session. Your diet is strictly regulated according to your event and training phase. Some trainers believe in something called dry training, where water intake is severely limited to make the body harder. Spoiler, this won't end well for your kidneys. The ancient Greeks knew nothing about proper hydration, and many athletes suffered from chronic dehydration, believing their concentrated, dark urine was a sign of peak physical condition rather than impending renal failure. After breakfast, you head to the gymnasium for your morning training session. The word gymnasium means place of nakedness, which tells you everything you need to know about dress code. Hope you're comfortable in your birthday suit, because that's your uniform for the next several hours. The gymnasium isn't the gleaming facility with air conditioning and padded equipment you might imagine. It's an outdoor space with packed dirt floors, basic stone seating, and rudimentary equipment like stone weights and leather punching bags filled with sand or fig seeds. The jumping weights, halteres, you'll use are unwieldy stone or lead masses that weigh up to 20 pounds each. These aren't scientifically designed tools, but crude implements that are just as likely to cause injury as improvement. Morning training lasts several grueling hours and varies depending on your specialty. Runners perform countless sprints and endurance work on rough terrain that would make modern track athletes weep. Wrestlers and boxers practice techniques that would be illegal in most modern sports due to their brutality. Eye gouging was frowned upon, but not strictly forbidden in wrestling. While boxing had almost no rules beyond, try not to kill your opponent outright. The pentathlon athletes have it worst, needing to master 5 different events: running, long jump, discus, javelin, and wrestling. Just imagine going from hurling a heavy metal disc to precision javelin, throwing to grappling with an oil-slicked opponent, all under the scorching Mediterranean sun without so much as a water break. After morning training, you might visit the public baths if you're in a city wealthy enough to have them. This isn't just about getting clean, it's a crucial social ritual. The bathhouse is where political connections are made, where sponsors might notice promising athletes, where reputations are built or destroyed through gossip. You'll soak in communal pools of varying temperatures, sharing the same water with dozens of other naked men of all ages and hygiene levels. The water isn't changed nearly as often as modern sensibilities would demand. If you think public pools today are gross, with their chlorine and filtration systems, just imagine marinating in the collective bodily fluids of the entire male citizenry with nothing but some heated water to kill the germs. But hey, at least you're not covered in olive oil and dust anymore. Midday brings your main meal, which for an athlete in serious training is a monotonous affair. Hope you like meat, because you'll be eating a lot of it, primarily beef or pork if you're a wrestler or boxer trying to build mass. The meat is tough, gamey, and often slightly spoiled because refrigeration won't be invented for millennia. Runners and other endurance athletes stick to the standard Mediterranean diet: bread, olive oil, vegetables, cheese, and wine. The concept of carb loading before competition exists, but the scientific understanding is non-existent. You'll eat exactly what your trainer tells you to, when he tells you to, in the quantities prescribed. Cheat on your diet, and you'll face punishment that makes modern trainers look like pushovers. You think your CrossFit coach is intense? Try having a bearded man in a toga publicly beat you with a stick for sneaking an extra piece of cheese. After a brief rest during the hottest part of the day, because even the Olympics-obsessed Greeks recognized that heat stroke is bad, you're back for afternoon training. This session might focus on technique rather than pure physical exertion, or it might be dedicated to practice competitions against your fellow athletes. There's no concept of training partners helping each other improve. Every interaction is a competition, a chance to establish dominance in the hierarchy. Injuries are common and considered part of the process. Break your toe? Wrap it and keep training. Dislocate your shoulder? Someone will put it back in place, and you're expected to continue. Modern concepts like recovery and injury prevention are alien philosophies. The weak are weeded out, and only the genetically gifted or absurdly stubborn survive this gauntlet. Evening brings another social meal, often taken with fellow athletes, or, if you're particularly promising, with wealthy patrons who might sponsor your Olympic journey. Table manners are different from modern expectations. You'll recline on your left side rather than sitting upright. Eat primarily with your hands. Spoons exist, but forks won't be common for centuries. And follow strict social hierarchies that determine who eats first and gets the choice portions. The symposium that follows dinner is essentially a drinking party with intellectual pretensions. You'll be expected to contribute to philosophical discussions while moderating your alcohol intake. Being a drunk might be acceptable for some, but athletes are held to higher standards. You're always representing your city-state, your trainer, and your sponsors, even when socializing. Entertainment options are limited by modern standards. There are no movies, no video games, no novels to read. You might attend theatrical performances during festivals, listen to musical recitals, or gamble with knucklebones, the ancestors of dice. Many athletes become proficient at the lyre or flute, not just as entertainment, but because musical training is believed to develop rhythm and coordination beneficial for athletic performance. Physical recreation that isn't part of your training regimen is discouraged. Why risk injury playing some casual game when you're preparing for Olympic glory? Your trainer monitors even your leisure activities, ensuring you're not undermining your physical condition with too much drinking or a sexual activity, which many trainers believe saps vital strength from athletes before competition. Sleep accommodations would make modern athletes fire their sports agents immediately. No memory foam mattresses or climate-controlled rooms here. You'll sleep on a hard pallet stuffed with straw or wool, perhaps with a thin blanket if the night is cool. Your pillow, if you use one, is a stuffed cloth sack or wooden headrest. Sleep hygiene is non-existent as a concept, though some trainers prescribe specific sleeping positions they believe beneficial for different athletic disciplines. Wrestlers, for instance, might be told to sleep on their right side to aid digestion of their massive protein intake. The scientific validity of such claims is exactly what you'd expect from people who also believe the gods get angry if you don't sacrifice enough bowls before competition. Your entire daily existence revolves around your athletic development. Every morsel of food, every hour of sleep, every social interaction is evaluated through the lens of, will this help me win? Privacy is an unknown luxury. You're constantly under scrutiny from trainers, fellow athletes, sponsors, and random citizens who feel entitled to comment on the athletic hopefuls representing their city. The psychological pressure is relentless in a culture where second place might as well be last place. There are no consolation prizes in the ancient Olympics, no good effort pats on the back. You either win and become a near deity in your hometown, or you lose and face varying degrees of shame. Some defeated athletes chose not to return home rather than face the humiliation of failure. And you thought modern sports parents were intense. At least they don't expect you to go into exile if you don't bring home the gold. Your daily life as an Olympic hopeful is characterized by pain, deprivation, social pressure, and monotony, all endured for the slim chance of winning a vegetable wreath and eternal glory. Modern athletes complain about rigorous training schedules while enjoying nutritionists, physical therapists, psychologists, climate-controlled training facilities, and memory foam mattresses. You get a stick-wielding trainer, questionable medical treatments involving burning and bleeding, communal bathing in dubious water, and the constant threat of illness or injury ending your career or your life. Still think you've got what it takes to be an ancient Olympic athlete? The real test hasn't even begun. Wait until you see what competition day brings. Spoiler alert, it makes your training regimen look like a luxury spa retreat by comparison. Your job title? Professional athlete. Your actual occupation? Full-time pain enthusiast with a side gig in religious performance art. As an Olympic hopeful, your sole purpose in life is to transform your body into a weapon, a tool, a living sculpture dedicated to athletic excellence and the glory of Zeus. Modern professional athletes might juggle training with endorsement deals and social media obligations, but your entire existence is consumed by physical preparation and the philosophies surrounding it. Congratulations, you've chosen, or more accurately, been chosen for, the career path with the highest pain-to-reward ratio in the ancient world. The economics of your athletic career would make a modern sports agent have a stroke. There's no multi-million drachma contract, no sneaker deals, no sports drink endorsements. Most Olympic hopefuls come from wealthy families because training is a full-time job that produces no income for years. If you're from a modest background, you'll need a wealthy patron to support your training, essentially making you a glorified pet project for some rich citizen seeking prestige by association. Your patron expects results, and his support can vanish faster than free food at an athlete's banquet if you don't show promise. Just imagine your livelihood depending entirely on some wealthy guy's whim and ego. Actually, when put that way, perhaps it's not so different from modern sports franchise owners. Your training isn't just physically demanding, it's mind-numbingly repetitive. Modern athletes benefit from varied training routines designed by sports scientists to prevent adaptation plateaus and mental burnout. You'll perform the same exercises, in the same order, day after day, year after year. Innovation is viewed with suspicion in a training tradition supposedly handed down from the heroes of myth. Your trainer believes consistency is the path to perfection. We do these exercises because they've always been done this way. If you think this is bad, wait until you hear about the specialized training for different events. Boxers, for instance, practice punching through hard leather sacks filled with sand or flour for hours until their knuckles are calloused masses of scar tissue. Who needs hand wraps when you can just turn your fists into natural clubs? The psychological component of your athletic career would make modern sports psychologists weep. There's no concept of performance anxiety or competitive stress. These are just seen as weakness of character. Your mental preparation consists mainly of your trainer screaming inspirational threats while occasionally quoting Homer. Visualization techniques exist, but they're entangled with religious ritual and superstition. Before major competitions, you might sleep in a temple hoping for divine dreams, offering competitive insights. Spoiler, this won't end well if you're a light sleeper, as temples aren't exactly known for their comfortable accommodations or quiet environments. You're essentially trying to receive sports coaching from gods who, according to myth, spend most of their time turning into animals to seduce mortals. Not exactly the specialized athletic expertise you might hope for. Your job comes with occupational hazards that would make modern workplace safety inspectors faint. Boxing and wrestling weren't just dangerous, they were potentially lethal. Boxing had minimal rules and used leather thongs wrapped around the knuckles, later replaced by the even more dangerous metal-lined cestus, rather than padded gloves. Matches ended only when one competitor could no longer continue or acknowledge defeat. Deaths weren't common, but certainly occurred, particularly in the pancration, a brutal combination of wrestling and boxing where almost anything was permitted short of eye gouging and biting. Even the track and field events carried significant risks. Javelins occasionally went off course with predictably grim results for unfortunate bystanders, and the jumping weights used in the long jump could cause severe joint injuries when used improperly. OSHA would have a field day shutting down the entire operation. The travel requirements of your career would make modern athletes with their private jets and luxury accommodations laugh or cry. The journey to Olympia could take weeks depending on your starting point, most of it on foot or in bone-jarring carts over roads that were little more than rutted dirt paths. Accommodations along the way ranged from inadequate to non-existent. Upon arrival at Olympia, you'd find no Olympic village with air conditioning and dining options from around the world. Instead, you'd camp in overcrowded, unsanitary conditions with thousands of other athletes and spectators. The bathroom facilities were primitive trenches at best, the water supply was questionable, and food safety standards were non-existent. Many athletes fell ill before even competing. Their Olympic dreams ended by dysentery rather than defeat. If you think airplane food and jet lag are rough on athletic performance, try walking 200 miles and then sleeping on the ground while battling food poisoning. The off-season is a modern luxury you won't experience. While there might be cycles in your training intensity, you never truly stop. Even during the relative recovery periods, you're expected to maintain your physical condition and adhere to your prescribed diet and lifestyle restrictions. Year-round dedication isn't just expected, it's demanded. Taking time completely away from training is seen as weakness, a lack of commitment to your craft. Modern athletes understand the importance of periodization and recovery in training cycles. Ancient Greek trainers believed constant work was the only path to excellence. The concept of burnout doesn't exist. If you can't handle the regimen, you're simply not worthy of Olympic competition. Your body isn't a temple. It's a construction site under perpetual renovation with no building permits or safety inspections. The competitive calendar is structured around religious festivals rather than optimal athletic scheduling. The Olympic Games themselves are held every 4 years during the hottest part of summer. August in Greece is brutally hot, with temperatures regularly exceeding 100 degrees Fahrenheit 38 degrees Celsius. You'll compete at the time dictated by religious tradition, regardless of whether it's the middle of the day under a merciless sun. Heat stroke? That's just the gods testing your worthiness. The Pythian, Nemean, and Isthmian games fill out the 4-year cycle, creating what's known as a periodos. Winning all 4 major games in the same cycle makes you a periodonix, the ancient equivalent of a Grand Slam champion. This prestigious achievement was rare enough that we know the names of several periodonix even 2,500 years later. Fame was one of the few tangible rewards for your suffering, and the ancient Greeks took their athletic celebrity seriously. The financial rewards for your Olympic career would make modern professional athletes revolt. There is no prize money at the Olympics. Your reward is literally a wreath of wild olive branches. Yes, you endure years of brutal training, risk death and disfigurement, travel for weeks in difficult conditions, all for some twigs you could pick yourself from any nearby olive tree. The true rewards come after victory. Your home city might grant you free meals for life, exemption from taxes, front row seats at theaters, and other honors. Some Olympic victors had statues erected in their likeness, poems composed about their victories, and their names remembered for generations. But these rewards only come with victory. There's no prize for participation, no silver or bronze medals, no recognition for being second best. It's win or nothing in the zero-sum game of Olympic glory. Performance-enhancing substances exist, but they're primitive and often counterproductive. Athletes might consume various concoctions of herbs, animal parts, and minerals believed to enhance strength or endurance. Some wrestlers ate huge quantities of meat, expensive and rare in the average Greek diet, to build mass, while distance runners followed special diets, thought to build endurance. Wine was used strategically, watered down for hydration, since the alcohol helped kill bacteria in questionable water sources. or in stronger forms for pain management. Some trainers prescribed specific dried fruits or nuts for different events, based on nothing more scientific than tradition and superstition. If you think modern doping is sophisticated but unethical, ancient performance enhancement was unsophisticated and unethical, and probably detrimental to your health and performance. Your career longevity depends entirely on avoiding serious injury and maintaining your competitive edge against younger athletes constantly entering the scene. There's no retirement plan, no 401k, no transition program to help athletes move into new careers. Once your competitive days are over, whether through age, injury, or defeat, your options are limited. Successful Olympic victors might become trainers themselves, passing on their knowledge to the next generation. Others leverage their fame into political or military careers. But for every success story, countless former athletes faded into obscurity, their bodies broken by years of punishment, with few transferable skills for other occupations. The glory was fleeting, but the physical toll was permanent. At least modern athletes can fall back on their millions when their playing days are over. Your retirement plan consists mainly of hoping your Olympic fame translates into some kind of sustainable income before your body completely breaks down. Your athletic career is a strange combination of sacred duty, public performance, personal ambition, and physical ordeal. You're not just an athlete. You're a living representative of your city-state's honor, a vessel for religious expression through physical excellence, and a walking billboard for your trainer's methods. The pressure is immense, the rewards uncertain, and the physical price nearly guaranteed. Modern athletes might complain about grueling training camps or media obligations, but they train in scientific facilities with medical staff on hand, compete for substantial financial rewards, and retire to lucrative post-career opportunities. You train in dusty gymnasia with primitive equipment, compete for vegetation and abstract glory, and hope your broken body can find some use after your competitive days end. Still think you could handle being an ancient Olympic athlete? The worst part is, despite all these hardships, you probably believe it's all worth it for that moment of victory. The ancient Greeks were nothing if not masters of athletic propaganda. Just remember, for every Olympic victor whose name echoed through history, thousands of hopefuls disappeared into anonymous obscurity, their sacrifices forgotten, their dreams unfulfilled, their bodies permanent testimonies to the brutal path they chose to walk. Welcome to the social minefield of being an Olympic athlete in ancient Greece. Hope you weren't planning on having a normal love life, family relationships, or friendships, because your athletic career is about to steamroll over all of them. Congratulations, you've chosen a path that makes modern celebrities' relationship challenges look like a pleasant stroll through a meadow. At least today's athletes can date without their coaches implementing a sex ban before big games. Oh wait, that still happens. Some traditions never die. First, let's talk about your family. They're either incredibly proud or bitterly resentful of your athletic pursuits, depending entirely on your success. If you're winning, your father is telling everyone at the Agora about his extraordinary parenting skills that produced such a specimen. If you're losing, he's questioning where he went wrong and whether it's too late to focus on your more promising younger brother. There's no middle ground. No, we're proud of you just for trying. The ancient Greeks didn't invent participation trophies. Your mother is likely spending half her time making offerings to various gods for your success, and the other half worrying you'll return home disfigured from a boxing match or not return at all. Spoiler, her concerns are entirely reasonable. Dating while training for the Olympics? Good luck with that. For starters, you're spending most of your waking hours naked around other men, which doesn't create many opportunities to meet eligible women. Even if you do somehow manage to encounter potential romantic partners, your trainer probably has strict rules about sexual activity before competition. Many believed it drained vital energy needed for athletic performance. Some trainers enforced abstinence periods of up to a year before important competitions. Just imagine trying to explain to your love interest, "Sorry, we can't see each other for the next 12 months because my trainer thinks sex will make me lose a foot race." If you think modern athletes have it tough with their no sex before the big game superstitions, ancient Olympic athletes were practicing abstinence regimens that would make monasteries seem like swingers' clubs. Of course, The ancient Greeks had complicated views on sexuality that would make modern people's heads spin. The gymnasium was not just a training facility, but also a place where older men, known as erasts, would observe and select promising young men, ereminos, for mentorship relationships that often included sexual components. These relationships were structured, socially accepted parts of upper-class male education, with their own rules and expectations. If you find this disturbing by modern standards, congratulations on having basic 21st century ethics. These relationships were supposed to be beneficial to the younger man's development and social advancement. But the power dynamics involved would make modern HR departments implode. Navigating these relationships was yet another complex social challenge for young athletes, who needed political and financial support but might not welcome all aspects of the mentorship being offered. Marriage is likely a distant concern during your peak athletic years, but if you do marry, your wife better be understanding about your absences, training schedule, dietary requirements, and the fact that you spend most of your time oiled up and wrestling with other naked men. Women in ancient Greece, particularly in Athens, had severely restricted lives, rarely appearing in public and managing the household while men participated in civic life. Your wife might never even see you compete, as women were banned from the Olympic Games on penalty of death. The only exception was for the priestess of Demeter, who got a front row seat. So while your wife is at home managing your household, you're off achieving glory she can't witness firsthand. You think modern WAGs, wives and girlfriends of athletes, have it rough with the travel schedule? At least they get to watch the games and enjoy the luxury boxes. Friendships among athletes are complicated by constant competition. Today's athletes might be fierce rivals during competition, but close friends off the field. In ancient Greece, the zero-sum nature of competition, where only one victor emerged and everyone else was essentially a loser, created more cutthroat dynamics. Your training companions are simultaneously your practice partners and your future opponents. Trust issues. You'll have them in abundance. Every technique you share might be used against you. Every weakness you reveal exploited in competition. You're also competing for the limited attention and resources of trainers and sponsors. The modern concept of team spirit would seem absurdly naive in this environment. It's not that genuine friendships didn't exist, but they existed within a system that constantly tested and strained them. Your relationship with your trainer, Petatribes, is perhaps the most important and complex social bond in your life. This man has nearly absolute authority over you, dictating what you eat, how you train, when you sleep, even with whom you socialize. The relationship combines elements of teacher and student, father and son, master and servant. Good trainers were celebrated nearly as much as their successful athletes, their methods studied and emulated. Your trainer takes credit for your victories, but rarely blame for your defeats. If you win, it's because of his brilliant training methods. If you lose, it's because you failed to properly execute his perfect techniques. Sound unfair? Welcome to the ancient Greek version of sports psychology, where it's all in your head meant you're weak-willed and have shamed your city-state. Your social status as an athlete is paradoxical. Physical training was associated with the aristocratic class who had leisure time for such pursuits. Yet many successful athletes came from more modest backgrounds and used athletic success as a path to social advancement. You exist in a strange middle ground, respected for your physical prowess, but not necessarily considered an intellectual equal by philosophers and politicians. Some intellectuals like Plato, who had been a wrestler in his youth, his name actually means broad-shouldered, respected athletic training as part of a balanced education. Others, like Euripides, mocked athletes as muscle-bound simpletons who contributed nothing useful to society. In his view, you're essentially a glorified entertainer, an ancient Greek version of reality TV star, famous for something that ultimately doesn't matter. At least modern athletes can comfort themselves with million-dollar contracts when intellectuals look down on them. If you're successful enough to compete at Olympia, you'll briefly become part of a unique social community that forms during the games. Athletes live together in the training area for a month before competition, creating an ancient version of the Olympic Village, minus the legendary hookup culture of the modern equivalent, given those sexual prohibitions. This period allows officials to verify that athletes are legitimate citizens, not slaves or foreigners, who who were banned from competition, and that they followed the training rules. It's also a time for sizing up the competition, engaging in psychological warfare, and forming alliances. The social dynamics would make the most dramatic reality TV show seem tame by comparison. Imagine being confined with your direct competitors for a month before the most important event of your life, with no privacy, questionable sanitation, and your every action scrutinized by officials and rivals alike. If you think this is bad, just wait until you see the dining arrangements. Hope you enjoy watching your opponents stress eat while you maintain your strict pre-competition diet. Your relationship with your home city-state is based entirely on potential glory. Cities invested in promising athletes because Olympic victories brought prestige to the entire community. A successful Olympic athlete could receive extraordinary honors, free meals for life at the public dining hall, front row seats at theaters and civic events, tax exemptions, and sometimes cash rewards. Some victors even had coins minted with their likeness, the ancient equivalent of appearing on a Wheaties box, but with actual monetary value. The flip side? If you lose, especially after your city has invested significant resources in your training, you might find it more comfortable not to return home at all. Some defeated athletes literally chose exile over facing their disappointed fellow citizens. You think modern athletes face pressure? Imagine competing with the knowledge that losing might mean never seeing your family again because the public shame would be too great to bear. Religion permeates every aspect of your social life as an athlete. Your physical excellence isn't just for personal glory, but a form of worship, a way of honoring the gods through the perfection of the human form. Before competitions, you'll make sacrifices and vows to deities associated with your event. Victory is seen as divine favor as much as personal achievement. Defeat might be interpreted as having somehow offended the gods. This adds yet another layer of pressure. You're not just representing yourself and your city, but participating in a religious ritual where your performance reflects your piety. Sporting events began and ended with religious ceremonies, and victories were celebrated with additional sacrifices and rituals. Your social standing is tied to how the gods seemingly view you, adding a supernatural dimension to the already immense pressure. If you lose, it's not just that your technique was flawed, the gods themselves apparently found you wanting. No pressure. The wider Greek society viewed athletics as more than entertainment. It was preparation for warfare. Many of the skills developed in training, strength, speed, endurance, combat techniques, transferred directly to the battlefield. Your athletic career is seen as part of your civic duty, preparing you to defend your city when needed. Military service is expected of all able-bodied male citizens, and athletes often became military leaders based on the respect they'd earned through competition. The connection between athletics and military prowess was so strong that some city-states, particularly Sparta, considered their military training regime superior to dedicated athletic training. Spartans didn't participate in the Olympics as frequently as other Greeks, supposedly claiming that the game's rules preventing killing opponents made them too soft for proper Spartan warriors. Imagine being considered too violent for a sport where concussions were a standard outcome. This is the ancient Greek equivalent of someone calling the UFC too gentle. For all the social prestige attached to athletic victory, your career has a very limited shelf life. Few athletes remained competitive past their early 30s, and many peaked much earlier. There was no concept of sports medicine to extend careers, no careful management of training loads to prevent burnout. Once your competitive days are over, you must transition to a new social role, perhaps as a trainer yourself, leveraging your name recognition into a political career, or returning to whatever family business or land you came from. Some former champions struggled with this transition, finding that society celebrated them for their past glories but offered limited opportunities for new achievements. The ancient Greeks didn't have memoirs or sportscasting careers for retired athletes. Once your physical prime passed, your social relevance began its inevitable decline. If you think modern athletes struggle with retirement, imagine having no endorsement deals, no broadcasting opportunities, no social media platforms to maintain your public profile, just fading memories of when the crowd chanted your name. Your relationships and social standing as an Olympic athlete in ancient Greece were complex, demanding, and entirely contingent on your athletic success. Modern athletes certainly face pressure and scrutiny, but they benefit from support systems, financial security, and social values that recognize their worth beyond their competitive results. You, ancient Olympic hopeful, navigate a social landscape where your entire identity and community standing hinge on victory in competition. Your relationships are colored by this singular focus, your social interactions limited by training demands, and your worth as a person often reduced to your athletic achievements. Still think you have what it takes to be an ancient Olympic athlete? The social pressure alone would crush most modern competitors before they ever set foot in the stadium. And we haven't even discussed what happens if you break the strictly enforced rules governing Olympic competition, a fate that could leave you socially and financially ruined, with your name literally inscribed on statues of shame for eternity. Make modern social media cancellation seem gentle by comparison, doesn't it? Let's talk about the spiritual side of your Olympic journey, where the gods are watching your every move and probably placing bets on whether you'll triumph or embarrass yourself spectacularly. Congratulations, you're not just an athlete anymore. You're a walking, sweating religious offering. Forget modern athletes thanking God after a touchdown. Your entire athletic existence is a form of worship, with your body as the temple and your athletic performance as the prayer. Spoiler: the gods aren't known for their consistent support or reliable intervention. Just ask Odysseus how his divine sponsorship worked out for his travel plans. The Olympic Games themselves began as a religious festival honoring Zeus, king of the gods. Legend claims they were established by Heracles, yes, that Hercules, as part of his 12 labors. Nothing like founding a sporting event to make up for a divinely induced murderous rampage. The religious significance of the games cannot be overstated. They were so sacred that even warring city-states declared temporary truces, the Olympic peace or ekakyria, to allow safe passage for athletes and spectators. Imagine modern nations pausing their conflicts every 4 years for the Olympics. Actually, that doesn't sound half bad. Perhaps the ancient Greeks were onto something here. The sacred truce was generally respected, though history records a few violations, because even divine mandates can't completely overcome human stubbornness and aggression. Before you even think about competing, you'll need to understand the complex web of rituals, prayers, and sacrifices required of Olympic athletes. Your preparation begins with purification ceremonies, as the gods apparently prefer their athletes clean inside and out. These might involve special diets, sexual abstinence, and ritual bathing, physical purity reflecting spiritual purity. Upon arriving at Olympia, you'll swear a sacred oath before a terrifying statue of Zeus holding thunderbolts, promising to follow the rules and compete honorably. This oath is taken while standing over the freshly sacrificed parts of a boar. Nothing says, "I'll play fair," quite like placing your hand on bloody animal entrails. The penalties for breaking this oath include heavy fines used to create bronze statues of Zeus, called zanes, inscribed with the cheater's name and offense. Ancient Greece's version of a wall of shame with exceptionally high production values. The athletic facilities at Olympia aren't just sports venues, they're sacred spaces. The stadium isn't merely a running track, but hallowed ground. The gymnasium isn't just a training facility, but a place where human excellence honors divine perfection. Every aspect of the competition grounds has religious significance, with altars and shrines strategically placed throughout. You'll make offerings before training and competition, perhaps a lock of hair, a valuable possession, or if you're wealthy enough, an animal sacrifice. The smoke from sacrificial fires rises constantly during the festival, creating a persistent haze over the proceedings. The sensory experience of ancient Olympics was less sidious, altious, forcious, and more sweaty, smoky, bloody, with the distinct aromas of burning animal fat, incense, unwashed athletes, and thousands of spectators baking in the summer heat. If you think modern stadium bathrooms are unpleasant, the ancient Olympic experience would overwhelm your senses in ways no modern sporting event could match. Different athletic events honor different deities, and you'd better know which god or goddess oversees your particular discipline. Runners might pray to Hermes, the swift messenger god. Wrestlers and boxers look to Heracles for strength. Pentathletes might appeal to Apollo, god of moderation and balance. Choosing the wrong divine patron is the ancient equivalent of showing up to a football match wearing the rival team's jersey, a rookie mistake with potentially disastrous consequences. You'll make specific offerings to your event's patron deity before competition, establishing a sort of divine contract. I've given you this perfectly good sheep. Now please don't let me faceplant during the long jump. The gods, however, were notoriously fickle in their favorites, often supporting whoever provided the most impressive sacrifices. If you think modern athletic sponsorships favor the wealthy, divine sponsorship in ancient Greece operated on an even less equitable system. Dreams and omens play a crucial role in your athletic preparation. Many athletes sleep in temples before important competitions, hoping for divine dreams offering technical advice or predictions of victory. Temple sleeping wasn't exactly a five-star hotel experience. Think hard stone floors, the persistent murmur of priests chanting, and the unsettling sounds of animal sacrifices nearby. Not exactly conducive to REM sleep. Nonetheless, dreams were considered direct communications from the gods, analyzed with the seriousness modern athletes might give to their coaches' feedback videos. Beyond dreams, you'll constantly be on alert for omens. A bird flying from left to right might predict victory, while dropping your oil flask during training could foretell defeat. Your trainer might postpone practice if the signs aren't favorable, regardless of your carefully planned training schedule. Imagine telling a modern Olympic coach you can't train today because you saw an unlucky crow on your morning jog. You'd be sent for psychological evaluation rather than praised for your divine awareness. Your diet isn't just about physical performance, but has religious significance as well. Certain foods are prescribed or forbidden based on religious beliefs rather than nutritional science. Some athletes believe eating the meat of strong animals transfers their qualities to the consumer. Lionheart for courage, deer meat for speed. Others follow dietary restrictions associated with mystery cults or philosophical schools like the Pythagoreans, who famously avoided beans because, well, the reasoning is obscure, but it possibly involved flatulence being an impediment to clear thinking. Some things never change. Athletes throughout history have been concerned with their digestive processes. These dietary practices are a strange blend of primitive performance enhancement, religious observance, and superstition, with little regard for whether they actually improve athletic performance. If you think modern fad diets like the keto craze are questionable, ancient athletes were literally eating animal organs corresponding to the bodily functions they wanted to enhance. Want stronger lungs? Eat lungs. Better vision? Eyes it is. This makes protein shakes seem positively scientific by comparison. The concept of fate, Moira, hangs over your athletic career like a shadow. While you train relentlessly and prepare meticulously, many Greeks believe your destiny is already determined by the fates, three goddesses who spin, measure, and cut the thread of each mortal life. This creates an interesting psychological contradiction. You must try your hardest while simultaneously accepting that the outcome might be predetermined. It's like a cosmic version of control what you can control, taken to philosophical extremes. Some athletes find this fatalistic outlook liberating. If you're destined to win or lose regardless of your actions, it removes some pressure. Others find it paralyzing. Why bother training if the outcome is already decided? Navigating this theological minefield while trying to maintain competitive focus would challenge even the most mentally tough modern athlete. At least today's sports psychologists don't have to incorporate divine predestination into their motivation techniques. Athletic success isn't just seen as personal achievement, but as evidence of divine favor. Victory suggests the gods find you worthy. Defeat implies some religious failing on your part. This adds an existential dimension to winning and losing that makes modern pressure pale in comparison. Lose a modern Olympic event, and you might disappoint your country. Lose an ancient Olympic event, and you might believe you've disappointed Zeus himself. Winners are garlanded with olive wreaths cut from sacred trees with a golden sickle, their victories celebrated with additional sacrifices and religious ceremonies. The olive wreath isn't just a symbol of victory, but a mark of divine blessing. Temporary elevation to almost godlike status. The flip side? Defeat might prompt soul-searching about which god you offended or which ritual you performed incorrectly. Was your sacrifice too small? Did you break an obscure religious taboo? Should you have prayed more fervently to Apollo instead of Hermes? The religious interpretation of athletic outcomes adds layers of psychological complexity that modern athletes, regardless of their faith, rarely encounter. Superstitions abound in your athletic preparation, many with religious origins but evolved into personal rituals. You might wear a specific amulet during competition, touch a certain statue for luck before entering the stadium, or insist on always putting your right sandal on first. These personal rituals create a sense of control in the face of uncertainty. Modern athletes with their lucky socks or pre-game routines would recognize this impulse, though ancient superstitions carried more religious weight. Some superstitions were widespread, like avoiding certain words that might invite bad luck, a practice called euphemism, speaking well instead of naming the feared outcome. Others were specific to individual athletes or trainers, passed down through generations of competitors. The line between religious observance and superstition was blurry at best, with personal rituals often gaining the weight of religious practice through repetition and perceived effectiveness. If your pre-competition routine of touching a statue of Hermes and then spinning around 3 times preceded several victories, who's to say the gods weren't responding to this specific ritual? The relationship between athletics and death has religious significance that would unnerve modern competitors. Athletic competition was seen partly as preparation for the ultimate contest, battle, where the stakes were life and death. Some events, particularly combat sports like boxing and pancration, occasionally resulted in fatalities, with these deaths viewed through a religious lens. A boxer who died in competition wasn't just the victim of a particularly brutal match, but possibly a sacrifice to the gods, his death giving the event greater sacred significance. Victory monuments sometimes resembled funeral monuments, blurring the line between athletic glory and glorious death. Athletic victors achieved a kind of immortality through their feats, their names remembered for generations, a concept with parallels to heroic death in battle. This connection between athletic competition and mortality gives ancient sports a gravity that modern competitions, for all their spectacle and importance, rarely achieve. When you step into the stadium at Olympia, you're not just risking defeat, but participating in a sacred drama where death is a possible, if uncommon, outcome. The afterlife factors into your athletic mindset in ways modern competitors would find alien. Greeks had complicated and sometimes contradictory beliefs about what follows death, from the shadowy existence in Hades described by Homer to more elaborate afterlife scenarios in mystery religions. Athletic victory might secure a more favorable position in the afterlife, your achievements remembered by the living keeping your memory, and thus some essential part of you alive. Some philosophical schools, particularly the Orphics and later Pythagoreans, believed in reincarnation, with your current life's achievements or failures influencing your next incarnation. Imagine competing not just for temporary glory, but for your soul's future prospects. This cosmic scorecard adds stakes to athletic competition that make Olympic gold medals seem trivial by comparison. Win or face an unfavorable reincarnation is a level of pressure no modern sports psychologist has had to address. As you approach competition day, the religious dimensions of your athletic journey reach their peak intensity. You've made countless sacrifices, literal animals on altars and figurative sacrifices of comfort, pleasure, and normal life, all for this moment of truth. You've purified your body, sworn sacred oaths, observed omens, and followed prescribed rituals. Now you stand at the threshold of the stadium, a religious supplicant as much as an athlete, about to perform not just for the assembled crowd, but for the gods themselves, who may or may not be watching with interest. Modern athletes speak of transcendent moments in competition, but for you, athletic transcendence has literal religious meaning, temporarily rising above ordinary mortal existence through physical excellence that honors the divine. As you take your place at the starting line, apply the last of your olive oil, or prepare for the opening wrestling hold, you're not just an athlete awaiting the starting signal, but a participant in a sacred drama that has unfolded for centuries on this same hallowed ground. Still think you could handle being an ancient Olympic athlete? The psychological weight of divine judgment would crush many modern competitors before they ever faced human opponents. And we haven't even gotten to the actual competition yet, where the gods may or may not reward all your pious preparation with victory, depending entirely on their immortal whims and whatever other celestial drama might be distracting them that day. If you thought modern referee decisions were arbitrary, wait until you experience the cosmic judging panel. Welcome to the What Could Kill You Today portion of your Olympic journey. Congratulations, you've survived the brutal training, navigated complex social hierarchies, and performed all the necessary religious rituals. Your reward? A smorgasbord of everyday hazards that make modern extreme sports look like kindergarten activities. Spoiler, this won't end well for many aspiring athletes. If you've made it this far without permanent disfigurement, consider yourself luckier than Odysseus on his 10-year voyage home, and he had divine intervention. Let's start with the training injuries that are less if and more when. Boxing and wrestling aren't just dangerous, they're designed to damage. Modern boxing has padded gloves partly to protect the opponent's face, but ancient boxing used leather thongs, himantes, wrapped around the knuckles, later replaced by the even more brutal cestus with metal studs or blades. These weren't safety measures, but weapons, transforming a fist into something closer to a mace. Cauliflower ears were so common among wrestlers and boxers that they became a recognizable mark of the athletic profession, the ancient equivalent of a LinkedIn profile showing your career history. Broken noses, shattered teeth, and facial scars weren't just occupational hazards, but expected milestones in a combat athlete's career. If you think modern MMA fighters look battered after a bout, ancient boxers often ended their careers unrecognizable compared to when they started. The medical care available for these inevitable injuries would make modern sports medicine professionals weep. The concept of germs won't be discovered for another 2,300 years, so infection is a constant threat. That cut on your eyebrow from yesterday's boxing match? Your trainer might treat it with a paste made of wine, plant matter, and possibly some animal dung for good measure. Just imagine the infection potential. Broken bones might be set reasonably well. Ancient physicians had plenty of practice, but without proper immobilization or pain management beyond wine and opium derivatives. Dislocations were popped back into place using techniques that haven't changed much, sudden force while the patient is distracted, but the rehabilitation protocol was essentially walk it off, rather than the carefully monitored physical therapy modern athletes receive. Joint injuries that would be career pauses for modern athletes with arthroscopic surgery and specialized rehabilitation were career enders for you, if not life-threatening, due to complications. The gymnasium itself is a petri dish of communicable diseases. You're exercising vigorously in close contact with dozens of other sweaty men, sharing water sources, bathing facilities, and scraping tools. Ancient Greeks had no concept of microscopic pathogens, so hygiene practices that seem obviously necessary to us were completely absent. That strigil you're using to scrape oil and dirt from your body? It was probably used by several other athletes before you with at best a quick rinse between users. The communal baths are breeding grounds for all manner of fungal infections. Athlete's foot is the least of your concerns. Intestinal parasites are so common they're practically team mascots, with various worms, flukes, and protozoa calling your digestive tract home. If you think modern locker rooms are gross with their antibacterial cleaning protocols, ancient training facilities were biological warfare zones where what doesn't kill you makes you stronger wasn't motivational speech, but literal survival strategy. The dietary dangers alone would terrify modern nutritionists. Food safety? Never heard of it. Refrigeration won't be invented for millennia, so meat is eaten fresh after slaughter or preserved through drying, smoking, or salting, methods that kill some, but not all dangerous microorganisms. Gastrointestinal distress is so common it's barely worth mentioning. Food poisoning that would send a modern person to the emergency room is just Tuesday for you. Water sources are frequently contaminated, which is why wine is a dietary staple. The alcohol content helps kill some pathogens. The specialized athletic diets, while theoretically designed for peak performance, are based on traditional beliefs rather than nutritional science. Some athletes practice dry training, deliberately limiting water intake to make the body harder and more resistant to fatigue. If you think this sounds like a recipe for kidney damage and heat stroke, congratulations on having a basic understanding of human physiology that ancient trainers lacked. Speaking of heat, the Mediterranean climate presents its own dangers. The Olympic Games themselves are held in August, the hottest month of the Greek summer, with temperatures regularly exceeding 100 degrees Fahrenheit 38 degrees Celsius. You're competing outdoors, with minimal shade, no cooling stations, and none of the carefully formulated electrolyte drinks modern athletes use to prevent dehydration. Heat stroke isn't just possible, it's a regular occurrence. The ancient Greeks noticed the symptoms but attributed them to various imbalances of bodily humors rather than the simple fact that humans aren't designed to wrestle vigorously in extreme heat while dehydrated. Some athletes died from what was almost certainly heat-related illness, their deaths attributed to divine disfavor rather than basic thermodynamics. If you think modern marathon runners collapsing in summer heat is concerning, imagine competing in similar conditions without any of the medical knowledge or interventions that keep today's athletes alive. The journey to Olympia itself presents numerous hazards that make modern travel delays seem trivial by comparison. Depending on your starting point, you might travel for weeks over land and sea. Roads are little more than dirt paths, subject to flooding, mudslides, and general disrepair. Highway robbery is a legitimate concern. Athletes traveling with valuable training equipment or accompanied by wealthy trainers make tempting targets. Sea travel is faster but comes with its own risks, storms, pirates, and the general unseaworthiness of ancient vessels. Arriving at Olympia physically intact and ready to compete is an achievement in itself. Modern athletes complain about jet lag. You're dealing with exhaustion from weeks of physically demanding travel, possible injuries sustained en route, and exposure to whatever novel pathogens you encountered along the way. Your pre-competition quarantine period at Olympia isn't just for verification of citizenship and training compliance. It's partly to ensure you're not bringing communicable diseases from your home city. Once at Olympia, the accommodation situation creates its own health hazards. There's no Olympic village with climate control and dining options, just crude temporary shelters and overcrowding. Thousands of athletes and spectators converge on a site with infrastructure designed for a fraction of that population. Sanitation is primitive at best. Communal latrines are little more than trenches. Hand washing isn't a recognized practice, and waste disposal consists mainly of away from the sleeping areas if possible. The resulting environment is a paradise for flies, mosquitoes, and the diseases they carry. Malaria is endemic in parts of ancient Greece, along with other insect-borne illnesses. If you think modern athletes are concerned about the water quality or air pollution at Olympic host cities, ancient competitors were literally camping in conditions that would violate every modern public health code simultaneously. The competition itself presents immediate physical dangers beyond the expected athletic injuries. The stadium track isn't the carefully maintained surface modern runners enjoy, but packed earth with all its irregularities. One misplaced step could result in a catastrophic ankle or knee injury. The jumping pit for the long jump isn't filled with soft sand, but looser soil that provides minimal impact absorption. Those jumping weights, halteres, you're using to extend your distance? They weigh up to 20 pounds each, and you're supposed to throw them backward while airborne. Imagine the shoulder injuries from improper technique, not to mention the risks to anyone standing in the wrong place when these primitive projectiles are released. The discus and javelin events take place in an area without modern safety precautions. Errant throws regularly cause injuries to fellow competitors, officials, or spectators who misjudge the flight path. If you think modern track and field has safety issues, ancient competitions were essentially controlled chaos with sharp objects. Combat sports elevate these dangers to potentially lethal levels. Boxing matches have minimal rules and no weight classes. You might face an opponent significantly larger or more experienced than yourself. Matches end only when one competitor cannot continue or acknowledges defeat, leading to situations where pride pushes athletes beyond safe physical limits. Wrestling isn't much safer, with joint locks and chokeholds that can cause permanent damage or death if maintained too long. The Pancration combines elements of both into what modern observers would consider closer to street fighting than sport, with only eye gouging and biting explicitly forbidden, and even these rules were sometimes ignored in the heat of competition. Deaths in combat sports weren't common, but occurred regularly enough to be an accepted risk. At least one athlete, Arikian, is famous for winning his pancration match despite dying during it. He forced his opponent to submit with his final movements while being choked to death. If that's not a testament to the different safety standards between ancient and modern sports, nothing is. Beyond the physical dangers, psychological health hazards abound in ways modern athletes would find intolerable. There's no concept of performance anxiety as a treatable condition, no sports psychologist to help you manage competitive stress. Mental preparation consists mainly of Stoic philosophy at best or superstitious rituals at worst. The immense pressure, knowing you represent your city, your family, and supposedly divine favor, creates psychological burdens few modern athletes could comprehend. The binary nature of victory and defeat, with no recognition for second place or personal best performances, means years of sacrifice can be rendered worthless in moments. Some defeated athletes chose exile rather than return home in disgrace. If you think modern social media criticism of athletes is harsh, imagine competing with the knowledge that losing might mean never seeing your family again because the shame would be too great to bear. The post-competition period brings its own health risks, particularly for victors. The sudden shift from strict training regimens to celebration, with the accompanying alcohol consumption and dietary indulgence, creates physical stress on a body accustomed to carefully controlled intake. Modern athletes might party after major victories, but they have nutritionists and medical staff monitoring their recovery. You're transitioning abruptly from peak physical condition to potential excess, with predictable consequences for your health. Some victors literally celebrated themselves to death, their bodies unable to handle the shift from disciplined athletic life to the excesses that came with success. Others sustained injuries during victory celebrations that ended their competitive careers, an ironic consequence of achieving the very goal they had sacrificed so much to attain. The long-term health consequences of an athletic career would horrify modern sports medicine specialists. Joint damage from repetitive impacts without proper protective equipment or technique refinement. Neurological effects from repeated head trauma in combat sports, with no concept of concussion protocols or recovery periods. Chronic pain managed with wine, opium, and acceptance rather than modern pain management and rehabilitation techniques. The ancient Greek athlete's body is used up and discarded, not preserved through carefully managed training and recovery protocols. Modern athletes might retire with chronic injuries, but ancient athletes were practically guaranteed a future of pain and limited mobility, assuming they survived their competitive careers at all. The glory was fleeting. The physical consequences were lifelong. For all these hazards and dangers, perhaps the most insidious is the lack of knowledge itself. You don't know what you don't know. Modern athletes benefit from centuries of accumulated wisdom about human physiology, training methodology, nutrition, and medical treatment. You're operating on traditions, superstitions, and limited observational knowledge passed down through generations. Some traditional practices accidentally align with modern science. Interval training existed in ancient Greece long before exercise physiologists quantified its benefits. Others are actively harmful, like deliberately training in the hottest part of the day to build resistance to heat, a practice more likely to cause heat stroke than improve performance. You have no way to distinguish beneficial practices from harmful ones except through trial and error, with your body as the experimental subject. As an Olympic athlete in ancient Greece, you navigate a world where everyday dangers would qualify as extreme risks by modern standards. Training methods that destroy your body in the pursuit of temporary excellence. Medical practices more likely to cause infection than healing. Nutritional beliefs based on tradition rather than biochemistry. Competition conditions that maximize spectacle at the expense of safety. The miracle isn't that some athletes achieved extraordinary performances under these conditions. It's that any survived long enough to compete at all. Still think you could handle being an ancient Olympic athlete? Modern athletes complain about inconveniences that ancient competitors would consider luxurious beyond imagination. The next time you hear a professional athlete lament the hardships of their multi-million-dollar career, remember your ancient counterpart, training in dust and heat, treating injuries with wine and prayer, risking death for a wreath of olive branches, and considering it all worthwhile for the chance at glory and divine favor. The true wonder of ancient athletics isn't the achievements recorded in surviving texts. It's that anyone lived long enough to record them at all. Now is the peak of his sporting journey, the competition day at Olympia. The moment when years of brutal training, social sacrifice, religious devotion, and physical suffering culminate in either immortal glory or spectacular humiliation. Congratulations, you've reached the ancient equivalent of the Super Bowl, except without the million-dollar commercials, halftime show, or any financial compensation whatsoever. Spoiler, this won't end well for approximately 99% of competitors. If the odds seem stacked against you, that's because they absolutely are. But hey, at least your devastating public failure won't be immortalized on social media, just potentially etched into bronze statues or mocking poetry that might survive for thousands of years. The Olympic festival lasts 5 days, but competition is compressed into 3 frantic days of events. You've already spent a month at Olympia for verification and final training, swearing oaths, and making sacrifices to the gods. Now it's showtime. The first day is dedicated to religious ceremonies and the competition of heralds and trumpeters. Yes, there were musical competitions alongside athletic events, because apparently the Greeks couldn't have a festival without someone blowing a salpinx loud enough to rupture eardrums. If you think modern opening ceremonies are tedious affairs with too many speeches, ancient Olympics began with elaborate animal sacrifices, the smoke and smell of burning flesh filling the air as priests examined entrails for divine omens about the coming competitions. Nothing builds athletic anticipation quite like watching 100 oxen being slaughtered in Zeus's honor. Your big moment arrives with surprising little fanfare by modern standards. There are no elaborate introductions, no dramatic entrance music, no flashy graphics displaying your statistics. You simply step into the stadium with your competitors, your naked body oiled and ready for action. The crowd of up to 40,000 spectators roars, mostly men, as women were banned from attending, with the curious exception of the priestess of Demeter, who got front row seats. Modern athletes perform before mixed crowds in climate-controlled stadiums. You're competing naked before a sea of sweaty, shouting men in the August heat. If you thought performing in your high school talent show was nerve-wracking, imagine doing it nude before a crowd that would fill a modern professional baseball stadium. Stage fright takes on an entirely new dimension when there's literally nowhere to hide your anxiety or any other physical response to stress. The competition format would baffle modern athletes accustomed to complex tournament structures and second chances. Most events are single elimination, one loss and you're done. Years of preparation rendered meaningless in moments. There are no qualifying rounds, no repechage, no consolation brackets. The randomness of the drawing of lots, literally pulling names from an urn, means you might face the defending champion in your first match while less skilled competitors advance through easier brackets. If you think modern tournament seeding sometimes seems unfair, ancient Olympic pairings were essentially cosmic roulette. Your athletic destiny could be determined by the random draw before you ever competed. Talk about anticlimactic. Imagine training for a decade only to draw the reigning champion in round 1 and be eliminated before most spectators have even found their seats. For runners, the moment of glory or failure comes with brutal simplicity. The sprint, stadion, is roughly 200 meters, run on a straight dirt track. No starting blocks, no carefully engineered running surfaces, no photo finish technology. The starting mechanism is a wooden gate called a hisplex that drops simultaneously for all runners, primitive but effective. False starts aren't detected by pressure-sensitive pads, but by officials with switches who might whip you for jumping the gun. If you think modern disqualifications for false starts are harsh, ancient officials would literally beat you for the same offense. The longer races, the dialos, double stadion, and dalikos, 24 laps, test endurance on a track that becomes increasingly chopped up and uneven as the day progresses. The victor is the first to cross the finish line. No timing records kept, no personal bests acknowledged. It's win or nothing, the binary outcome that defines all Olympic events. For combat sports athletes, your moment arrives in the most direct confrontation possible. Boxing matches take place without rings or rounds, continuing until someone cannot continue or acknowledges defeat. The only way to signal submission is to raise your index finger, assuming you're conscious enough to do so. Wrestling requires 3 points, falls, to win, with techniques that would make modern wrestling coaches wince. Joint manipulation, throws designed to maximize impact rather than control, and relentless pressure that exploits any physical weakness. The pancration combines elements of both into what modern observers would consider street fighting with minimal rules. One famous pancratist, Sostratus of Sicyon, was known for breaking his opponent's fingers at the beginning of matches, a technique that was completely legal and earned him 12 championship wreaths across various games. If you think modern MMA is brutal, ancient combat sports operated with a philosophy closer to survive if you can than any structured competitive framework. Field event athletes face their own unique pressures. The discus throw isn't standardized, the weight and size vary, making comparisons between competitions impossible. Your technique is evaluated as much for aesthetic grace as for distance achieved. The javelin throw includes a leather thong, a mentum, wrapped around the shaft to increase distance through rotation, a skill requiring years to master that can go catastrophically wrong in an instant. The long jump employs those stone or lead weights, halteres, we mentioned earlier, using them to propel yourself forward before releasing them backward mid-jump, a technique lost to time that modern athletes have been unable to replicate successfully. One mistimed release could result in shoulder dislocation or, worse, dropping the weights on your own feet upon landing. If you think modern field events are technical challenges, ancient versions combined technical complexity with primitive equipment and minimal safety considerations. The pentathlon presents perhaps the most balanced test of athletic skill, combining running, jumping, discus, javelin, and wrestling. You must perform competently across all 5 disciplines, a true test of all-around athletic ability rather than specialized excellence. The exact scoring system remains debated by historians, but it appears that 3 victories across the 5 events guaranteed an overall win. This creates unique strategic considerations, knowing when to conserve energy and when to push for victory in specific events. Modern decathletes face similar strategic challenges but benefit from standardized scoring tables. You're navigating a more subjective evaluation system where judges might be influenced by your form, grace, and reputation as much as by objective measures of performance. If you think modern Olympic judging controversies are dramatic, ancient scoring disputes could escalate to accusations of divine disfavor or claims that your opponent had employed magical charms against you. The moment of victory, if you're among the blessed few who achieve it, is simultaneously more simple and more profound than modern Olympic triumphs. No medal ceremony, no national anthem, no sponsor festoon podium. A simple olive wreath, cotinos, cut from the sacred trees at Olympia, is placed on your head by officials. This vegetation is your sole material prize. Yes, you endured years of brutal training for foliage you could pluck from any olive tree. But this particular olive wreath carries divine significance and societal prestige beyond any modern medal. The symbolic value of Olympic victory transforms you from mere mortal to something approaching heroic status. Your name will be recorded for posterity. Your hometown will erupt in celebration upon your return. Poets may compose works celebrating your achievement. Sculptors might create statues capturing your physical perfection at the moment of triumph. Modern Olympians get corporate sponsorships. You get literal immortality through art and literature. Failure at the Olympics comes with none of the consolation modern athletes receive. There are no silver or bronze medals, no recognition for personal bests, no honor just to compete platitudes. You're simply a non-victor. Your years of sacrifice yielding nothing but the knowledge that you weren't good enough when it mattered. Some defeated athletes face this reality with philosophical acceptance. Others are destroyed by it. The stories of athletes unable to face their hometowns after defeat aren't mythological exaggerations, but documented historical realities. Some chose exile over returning in disgrace. Others attempted to compete again at the next Olympics. For long years later, their bodies older and often more damaged from continued training. If you think modern athletes face pressure, imagine competing with the knowledge that losing might mean effectively ending your life as you know it. Never seeing your family again because the shame would be too great to bear. For the fortunate victors, the glory continues long after the competition ends. Your homecoming is a triumph rivaling any modern ticker tape parade. Cities would sometimes demolish sections of their walls to create a special entrance for returning Olympic victors, symbolically stating that a city with such athletes needs no defensive walls. You'll receive substantial material benefits: free meals for life at the public expense, front row seats at theaters and civic events, tax exemptions, and sometimes significant cash rewards. Some victors had coins minted with their image, the ancient equivalent of appearing on a Wheaties box, but with actual monetary value. The social capital of Olympic victory translates into political opportunity, military leadership positions, and marriage prospects among the most elite families. If modern Olympic gold medalists leverage their success into endorsement deals and media careers, ancient victors transformed their olive wreaths into political power and social ascendancy. Epic failures at the Olympics aren't just personal disappointments, but potentially community-wide disgraces. Cities invested significant resources in promising athletes, expecting returns in prestige and divine favor. A particularly embarrassing defeat, especially if you had boasted of certain victory beforehand, a common psychological tactic, might make you unwelcome in your hometown. Worse still are the athletes caught cheating or breaking the sacred oaths. Their punishments extend beyond disqualification to substantial fines used to create bronze statues of Zeus, Zanes, inscribed with the cheater's name and offense. These statues line the entrance to the stadium, a permanent gallery of shame through which all future competitors would pass. If you think modern doping scandals lead to lasting disgrace, ancient Olympic cheaters had their names literally set in bronze as a warning to future generations, their dishonesty immortalized in a way no modern social media cancellation could match. The physical toll of competition, win or lose, is immediate and often severe. Modern athletes have medical teams ready to address injuries, rehydration protocols, and recovery strategies. You have wine for pain management and the questionable ministrations of trainers whose medical knowledge is based primarily on tradition and superstition. Combat sport athletes often leave competition permanently disfigured. Runners suffer stress fractures without proper diagnosis or treatment. Even victors may find their moment of triumph accompanied by injuries that will plague them for life. The glory is eternal. Unfortunately, so is the physical damage sustained in its pursuit. If modern athletes retire with chronic pain despite state-of-the-art medical care throughout their careers, ancient Olympians faced far worse long-term prospects from careers conducted without any understanding of sports medicine or proper rehabilitation. For most competitors, the Olympic experience is their one moment on the ultimate athletic stage. The 4-year cycle means many get only 1 or 2 chances at eternal glory before age and accumulated injuries in their competitive careers. The psychological weight of this limited opportunity creates pressure few modern athletes could comprehend. It's not just a competition, but potentially your entire life's meaning condensed into a few crucial moments of performance. Modern athletes might have multiple Olympics, world championships, or professional seasons to define their careers. You have perhaps one realistic shot at victory before your body begins its inevitable decline without the medical interventions that extend modern athletic careers. If you think Olympic pressure is intense today, imagine competing with the knowledge that this single performance might be referenced in your funeral oration as either your life's crowning achievement or its most devastating failure. The moment of Olympic competition, your moment of potential glory or epic failure, arrives and departs with brutal swiftness considering the years of preparation preceding it. The sprint lasts less than 30 seconds. Wrestling matches might continue for hours, but often end quickly when one competitor establishes dominance. Even the longer foot races conclude in less than an hour. The discus, javelin, and jump are over in instants. Years of sacrifice distilled into moments of performance, with consequences, glorious or disastrous, that will echo through the remainder of your life. Still think you could handle being an ancient Olympic athlete? Modern competitors face pressure, certainly, but within systems designed to recognize excellence at multiple levels and with numerous opportunities for redemption. You face a binary outcome, immortal victory or anonymous defeat, determined in moments and remembered for eternity. The ancient Olympic competition wasn't just a sporting event, but a crucible that transformed ordinary men into either heroes or cautionary tales, with no middle ground for the merely competent or hardworking. It wasn't just your athletic ability on trial, but your character, your divine favor, your very worth as a representative of your community. And all of this judgment rendered while you compete naked before 40,000 spectators in the August heat, with no appealing to instant replay or challenging the judges' decisions. Suddenly, modern Olympic pressure seems almost quaint by comparison, doesn't it? This is the retirement phase of your Olympic career. Assuming, of course, you've survived this far without dying from infection, combat sport injuries, or the sheer stupidity of ancient medical practices. Congratulations, you've reached an age that many of your fellow athletes never see, your 30s. Spoiler, this won't end particularly well either. If you thought modern athletes struggled with the transition to post-competitive life, just wait until you experience the ancient Greek version of retirement planning, which mainly consisted of hope you won something or made powerful friends. Otherwise, good luck with those chronic injuries and no healthcare system. Let's talk life expectancy in ancient Greece. Modern Olympics have featured competitors in their 50s and even 60s in certain events. Your competitive window? Probably between 18 and 30, with most athletic careers effectively over by the mid-30s at the latest. This isn't just because of the brutal nature of training and competition, though that certainly contributes to premature aging. The average life expectancy in ancient Greece hovered around 35 to 40 years, if you made it past childhood. This number is somewhat misleading because high infant mortality drags down the average. People who reached adulthood could potentially live into their 60s or 70s. But for athletes who spent decades punishing their bodies without modern medical care, reaching old age was even less common than for the general population. Just imagine pushing your body to its absolute limits for years using techniques designed for maximum performance, with zero concern for long-term health consequences. If you think modern NFL players face troubling health statistics in retirement, ancient Olympic athletes were essentially participating in a slow-motion full-body sacrifice ritual. Your retirement isn't marked by a press conference, farewell tour, or lucrative broadcasting contract. There's no pension plan, no 401k, no investment portfolio carefully managed by your financial advisor. One day, you simply can no longer compete at the necessary level, and your athletic career is over. This transition might come gradually as younger, faster competitors begin to defeat you, or suddenly through catastrophic injury. Either way, the shift from revered athlete to former competitor happens with brutal swiftness in a culture obsessed with physical excellence and victory. If you think modern athletes struggle with identity crises when they retire, imagine your entire societal value being based on athletic prowess that has now abandoned you. You're not just leaving a career, you're stepping down from a quasi-religious position as an exemplar of divine-touched physical perfection. That's quite the second-act problem. The physical toll of your athletic career becomes your constant companion in retirement. Those joints you sacrificed for glory, they're now chronically painful and deteriorating without the benefit of modern anti-inflammatories, physical therapy, or surgical interventions. That broken nose that never healed properly? It restricts your breathing for the rest of your life. The accumulated traumatic brain injuries from boxing or pancration. They manifest as cognitive decline, mood disorders, and tremors that would be diagnosed and potentially treated in modern medicine, but are simply accepted as the cost of athletic pursuit in your era. If you competed in combat sports, your face likely bears the permanent evidence of your career, scarred, misshapen, with the distinctive cauliflower ears that marked wrestlers and boxers. If you think modern athletes look rough a decade after retirement, ancient Olympians were walking medical museums of everything that can go wrong with the human body when pushed to extremes without proper care. Financial security in retirement depends almost entirely on whether you were victorious. Olympic champions received substantial benefits: free meals for life in their home cities, tax exemptions, political opportunities, and social prestige that could be leveraged into comfortable positions. Non-victors? You're largely on your own, with few transferable skills after decades focused solely on athletic development. Some former athletes became trainers themselves, passing on their knowledge to the next generation. Others leveraged whatever connections they'd made through athletic circles into military careers or political positions. Many simply returned to family businesses or agricultural work, their bodies prematurely aged and damaged, attempting to build a post-athletic life with limited options. If you think modern athletes face challenges transitioning to regular careers, imagine trying to find employment when your only skill set involves being naked, oiled, and exceptionally good at wrestling other naked, oiled men. Not exactly the qualifications most job markets are seeking, even in ancient Greece. Social status in retirement varies dramatically based on your competitive record. Victorious Olympians retain lifelong prestige, addressed with honorific titles, included in important civic and religious events, and generally treated as living embodiments of their city's excellence. Their opinions carry weight in public discourse not because of any particular wisdom or knowledge, but simply because they once ran faster or threw farther than their competitors. Non-victors face a steeper social decline, sometimes treated with respect for their efforts, but just as often viewed as disappointments who failed to fulfill their potential. If you think modern athletes face scrutiny in retirement, imagine living in a small city-state where everyone knows you as the guy who lost in the first round at Olympia for the rest of your life. There's no changing careers or moving to a new city where nobody recognizes you. Your identity is permanently fixed by your athletic performance, for better or worse. Healthcare in retirement is essentially non-existent by modern standards. The medical knowledge of the time combines some practical anatomical understanding with wild theories about bodily humors and divine influence on health. Treatments range from the occasionally effective to the actively harmful, bleeding, purging, and applying various substances that do nothing for the underlying condition and often create new problems. Chronic pain is managed primarily through wine, opium derivatives when available, and philosophical acceptance. Physical therapy consists of whatever exercises seem intuitively helpful, without any scientific understanding of rehabilitation principles. If you think modern athletes complain about their aches and pains decades after competition, imagine managing the same conditions with treatments barely more effective than hoping the gods take pity on your suffering. Mental health challenges in athletic retirement would be completely unrecognized and untreated. The psychological impact of transitioning from revered athlete to ordinary citizen, or from ordinary athlete to social disappointment, is significant. Modern athletes often struggle with depression, anxiety, and identity crises when their competitive careers end, despite having financial resources and therapeutic options. You face the same psychological challenges without any framework for understanding them beyond personal weakness or divine disfavor. The concept of mental health as distinct from character or religious standing doesn't exist. If you're struggling with what we would now recognize as depression following the end of your athletic career, contemporary wisdom would suggest you make more sacrifices to the gods or simply exercise more. If you think modern, just tough it out approaches to mental health are inadequate, ancient Greek attitudes make them seem positively enlightened by comparison. Family life in retirement might provide some comfort, assuming you've managed to establish one. Many athletes delayed marriage and family formation during their competitive years, particularly given the sexual prohibitions often imposed during training. Once retired, you might finally have the opportunity to marry and have children, though possibly at an age considered quite advanced for first-time parenthood in a society where men typically married in their late 20s or early 30s. Your physical condition might impact your attractiveness as a marriage partner. Olympic victors would have their pick of potential spouses, while severely injured former athletes might struggle to find partners willing to take on what amounts to a caretaking role. If you think modern athletes have complicated dating lives due to fame and travel schedules, imagine trying to start a family after your prime years have been dedicated entirely to athletic pursuit, leaving you potentially damaged, financially insecure, and with limited non-athletic social skills. Intellectual and philosophical engagement might become more important in retirement, particularly as physical capabilities decline. The ancient Greek world offered rich traditions of philosophy, literature, and political thought that some former athletes embraced once their competitive days ended. Plato himself was named for his broad shoulders and had been a wrestler in his youth before turning to philosophy. This intellectual turn wasn't available to all, however, Education was primarily for the upper classes, and athletes from more modest backgrounds might have limited literacy and educational opportunities. If you think modern athletes struggle to find meaningful pursuits after competition ends, imagine facing the same challenge in a world where educational opportunities were severely restricted by class and where the concept of career change barely existed. Social utility in old age varies widely based on competitive achievement and social connections. Successful former athletes might serve as judges at games, trainers for the next generation, or ceremonial figures at religious festivals. Those who leveraged their athletic fame into political or military careers could remain influential into their later years. Others simply faded into obscurity, their glory days increasingly distant memories as newer champions captured public attention. The ancient Greek world had limited resources for supporting the elderly in general, with family being the primary safety net. Former athletes without family support or significant personal resources could face genuine hardship in their final years. If you think modern society sometimes discards its elderly, ancient systems offered even fewer protections for those who could no longer contribute actively. Death, when it eventually comes, might at least be commemorated with reference to your athletic achievements, if you were successful. Funeral inscriptions and monuments for Olympic victors sometimes reference their competitive glory alongside other life accomplishments. The ultimate form of immortality in ancient Greek culture was being remembered through story and song, and successful athletes achieved this more often than most ordinary citizens. Non-victors received less elaborate commemoration, their athletic efforts perhaps noted but not celebrated. The concept of legacy was profoundly important in a culture that viewed being forgotten after death as a kind of second death, more complete and terrible than physical demise. If you think modern athletes worry about their legacies and Hall of Fame inductions, imagine competing in a culture where being remembered was literally the closest thing to immortality available to mortals. The bitter irony of the Olympic athlete's life cycle is that the very pursuit that might grant you immortal fame also likely shortened your mortal existence and diminished its quality. The brutal training, dangerous competition, inadequate medical care, and accumulated injuries all extract a price that becomes increasingly apparent in whatever years remain after your competitive career ends. You sacrificed your body's long-term well-being for temporary glory, an exchange that might seem reasonable in youth, but increasingly questionable as the chronic pain intensifies and basic physical functions become challenging. If you achieved victory, perhaps the trade seems worthwhile despite the cost. If not, you're left with all the physical consequences and none of the compensating glory. If you think modern athletes make difficult risk-reward calculations regarding their health, ancient Olympians were literally trading years of life and basic physical comfort for a chance at remembrance. As your life draws to its close, whether prematurely through the long-term consequences of athletic injuries or at a more typical age for your era, you might reflect on the bargain you made. Body sacrificed for glory, youth dedicated to pursuit of excellence by standards that recognized only victory as success. Modern athletes at least compete within systems designed to extend careers, protect health when possible, and provide multiple paths to achievement and recognition. You participated in a system that used your body as a disposable vehicle for civic pride and religious expression, with minimal concern for what happened to that vehicle once its primary purpose was fulfilled. Still think you could handle being an ancient Olympic athlete? The glory was real but fleeting, the physical consequences permanent and often devastating. And perhaps the most sobering reality of the ancient Olympic athlete's life cycle is that, despite all we know about the brutal nature of training, competition, and retirement, many would still make the same choice if transported back in time, sacrificing bodily well-being for a shot at immortal remembrance. Some human drives transcend historical periods, and the desire for glory that outlasts death remains as powerful now as it was when the first athletes competed at Olympia, naked bodies gleaming in the sun, reaching for an excellence that might echo their names through the centuries. The only difference is that modern athletes can at least hope to walk comfortably in old age after their moment in the sun has passed. Welcome to the final chapter of your illustrious or ignominious Career as an ancient Olympic athlete. You're probably dead by now, whether from combat sport injuries, infected wounds, or the creative medical treatments that were more likely to kill you than whatever they were attempting to cure. Congratulations, you've achieved the ultimate athletic retirement plan, the sweet release of death. Spoiler: even in the afterlife, you can't escape the legacy of your athletic career. If you thought the judgment of the Olympic crowd was harsh, just wait until historians and archaeologists start analyzing your remains and telling the world about your bone deformities and terrible dental health. Let's talk about how we view ancient Olympic athletes today. Modern Olympics present themselves as the noble continuation of an ancient tradition, complete with solemn ceremonies, symbolic flame, and lofty rhetoric about international brotherhood through sport. Reality check. The ancient games would horrify modern sensibilities and violate approximately 743 international sporting regulations, human rights conventions, and workplace safety laws simultaneously. The International Olympic Committee loves to wrap itself in the prestige of ancient tradition while conveniently ignoring that the original Olympics featured naked competitors, openly bribed officials, regular fatalities, and exactly zero corporate sponsorships. If you think modern Olympics have controversies, imagine the media coverage if today's games banned all women from watching, required athletes to compete nude, and occasionally ended with dead boxers being crowned champions posthumously. The physical reality of ancient Olympic athletes has been romanticized beyond recognition in popular culture. Hollywood depicts Greek athletes as perfectly proportioned specimens with symmetrical features and immaculate hygiene. Archaeological evidence tells a different story. Skeletal remains show joint deformities, evidence of repeated trauma, dental abscesses, and signs of nutritional deficiencies. Skull fractures are common among presumed combat sport practitioners. If those bones could talk, they'd be screaming about chronic pain and questionable medical interventions. Modern films show ancient athletes with perfect teeth and unblemished skin. Reality featured rotting molars and bodies covered in scars from training injuries. If you think Instagram filters create unrealistic beauty standards, the gap between real ancient athletes and their modern depictions makes social media seem truthful by comparison. The ethical framework of ancient athletics appears barbaric by contemporary standards. We celebrate the ideal of fair play and sportsmanship, concepts that would baffle ancient competitors who used every advantage possible short of outright prohibited cheating. Psychological warfare, including insults and intimidation, wasn't just common but expected. Combat sports continued until one competitor could not continue or acknowledge defeat, not until some arbitrary point threshold or time limit. The modern conception of athlete welfare simply didn't exist. Participants were essentially sacrificial figures whose suffering honored the gods and entertained the crowd. If you think modern debates about athlete safety are contentious, imagine proposing the ancient Olympic model to contemporary sporting bodies. So they fight until someone's unconscious, while completely naked, with essentially no medical support available. Also, losers might choose exile rather than face their communities after defeat. Shall we implement this for Paris 2024? The socioeconomic reality of ancient athletics contrasts sharply with modern professional sports. Today's Olympic ideal maintains the fiction of amateurism while functioning within a thoroughly commercialized system where athletes from wealthy nations enjoy enormous advantages in training resources and medical support. Ancient Olympics made no pretense about equality of opportunity. Training required leisure time available primarily to the wealthy, though exceptional talents from more modest backgrounds occasionally received patronage. The ancient games were simultaneously more honest about their elitism and more democratic in their rewards. Victory brought the same olive wreath regardless of background, but the path to competition explicitly favored those with resources. If you think modern sports have problems with access and opportunity, ancient athletics practically required family wealth or powerful patrons just to begin serious training. Religious dimensions of ancient Olympics have been almost entirely stripped from their modern counterpart. Contemporary games maintain ceremonial elements, the flame, the oath, the parade of nations, but these are secular rituals rather than religious observances. The ancient games were fundamentally religious festivals where athletic competition honored the gods, particularly Zeus. Victory wasn't just personal achievement, but evidence of divine favor. Modern athletes might point skyward or cross themselves after victory. Ancient competitors literally believed their success came from supernatural support and confirmed their standing with the gods. If you think modern athletes are superstitious with their pre-game rituals and lucky items, ancient Olympians operated within a complete religious framework where every aspect of competition had divine significance. The modern separation of sport from religion would be incomprehensible to ancient participants who saw their athletic excellence as a form of worship. The concept of the Olympic athlete as a role model has evolved dramatically. Ancient victors were celebrated for their excellence without much concern for their character or behavior outside competition. Statues depicted their physical perfection rather than any moral qualities. Modern athletes face scrutiny of their personal lives, social media presence, political statements, and ethical choices. The ancient games produced champions, not necessarily heroes in the broader sense. Victory itself was the virtue most celebrated, not how one conducted oneself in daily life. If you think modern athletes face unfair expectations about being role models, ancient Olympics were refreshingly simple. Win gloriously, and you'll be immortalized regardless of whether you were a decent human being in other respects. Gender dynamics in athletics represent perhaps the starkest contrast between ancient and modern games. Women were excluded from the ancient Olympics, not just as competitors, but largely as spectators as well, with the notable exception of the priestess of Demeter. Modern Olympics, after a problematic history of gradually expanding women's participation, now approach gender parity in events and media coverage. Ancient Greece did have separate athletic competitions for women, particularly the Heraea Games honoring Hera, but these were far less prestigious than the Olympics. The idealized male form was the central focus of ancient athletic celebration, with female athletic achievement an afterthought at best. If you think gender equality in modern sports still has room for improvement, ancient athletics were operating from a completely different conceptual universe where women's sport was barely acknowledged within the mainstream athletic culture. The relationship between athletics and warfare has transformed entirely. Ancient Greek athletics developed partly as military training. Skills like javelin throwing, wrestling, and running had direct battlefield applications. The modern Olympic movement, despite originating in the late 19th century with similar connections to military preparedness, now explicitly presents itself as a peaceful alternative to conflict, promoting international understanding through competition. The ancient games did include the Olympic truce, which allowed safe passage to competitors and spectators, but this was a pragmatic measure rather than an idealistic peace initiative. If you think modern Olympic rhetoric about peace and brotherhood seems idealistic, the ancient games made no such pretensions. They temporarily paused wars rather than attempting to replace them with symbolic competition. Scientific understanding of athletic performance represents the most dramatic evolution between ancient and modern Olympics. Ancient training methods relied on tradition, observation, and often superstition. Modern athletes benefit from biomechanical analysis, nutritional science, physiological monitoring, and evidence-based training methodologies. Ancient Greeks recognized the importance of specific training regimens, proper diet, and recovery periods, but without understanding the underlying mechanisms. Some traditional practices accidentally aligned with modern science. Others were actively harmful. If you think debates about optimal training techniques are complicated now, ancient athletes were operating with fundamental misunderstandings about basic human physiology, guided by trainers whose knowledge was based primarily on tradition and limited observational evidence rather than controlled studies or scientific principles. The legacy of ancient Olympics persists most powerfully in the ideal of athletic excellence as something transcendent and worthy of celebration. Despite all the differences in practices, understanding, and ethical frameworks, both ancient and modern games recognize exceptional physical achievement as something that captures human imagination and inspires admiration. The specific athletes celebrated by ancient Greeks are largely forgotten now. A few names like Milo of Croton, the legendary wrestler, or Leonidas of Rhodes, winner of multiple sprint events, survive in historical records, but most victors faded from memory despite the promise of immortal fame. If there's a lesson in this for modern athletes obsessed with legacy, Perhaps it's that even the most celebrated champions eventually become historical footnotes, their moments of glory preserved only in fragments and passing references rather than the eternal remembrance they imagined. If you were somehow transported from ancient Olympia to a modern Olympic stadium, properly clothed, of course, you'd find the experience simultaneously familiar and utterly alien. The basic athletic challenges remain recognizable: running fast, jumping far, throwing with power and accuracy, defeating opponents in combat sports. But the scientific preparation, safety precautions, gender inclusivity, international participation, corporate sponsorship, media coverage, and technological assistance would seem like visions from another world entirely. You'd recognize the fundamental human drive to compete and excel while being bewildered by almost everything else about how that drive is now expressed and celebrated. Just imagine trying to explain to a time-traveling ancient Olympic boxer why he can't just keep hitting his unconscious opponent until someone literally drags him away. So, would you still want to be an ancient Olympic athlete now that you've seen the whole picture? The glory was real but fleeting, the physical cost severe and permanent, the chances of victory minuscule, the rewards largely symbolic rather than material. Modern athletes face their own challenges, certainly, but within systems designed to extend careers, protect health, provide multiple paths to recognition, and offer financial compensation commensurate with public interest. You participated in a system that used your body as a vehicle for civic pride and religious expression, with minimal concern for what happened to that vehicle once its purpose was fulfilled. The ancient Olympic athlete made a trade that few modern competitors would accept, potentially sacrificing everything: health, comfort, longevity, sometimes even life itself, for a moment of glory and a wreath of olive branches. And yet, there's something undeniably compelling about the purity of ancient competition, stripped of modern commercialism and technological intervention. No billion-dollar stadiums, no sponsorship controversies, no debates about performance-enhancing drugs or technological advantages in equipment. Just human bodies competing directly against one another in tests of speed, strength, skill, and endurance. For all the brutality, danger, and primitive conditions, ancient Olympics celebrated athletic excellence in its most fundamental form. Perhaps that's why the modern games continue to wrap themselves in ancient symbolism despite having evolved into something the original competitors would barely recognize. The dream of pure athletic competition, of achieving immortality through physical excellence, remains as powerful now as it was when the first athletes gathered at Olympia over 2,700 years ago. As we close this journey through the life of an ancient Olympic athlete, perhaps the most important question isn't whether you could have survived the training, competition, and aftermath. It's whether, knowing everything about the brutality, danger, and slim chances of success, you'd still be tempted by the opportunity. Would you accept years of suffering for a moment of potential glory? Would you risk everything for a chance at being remembered? Many would say no, wisely choosing the comforts and protections of modern athletic systems. But some, the truest spiritual descendants of those original naked competitors, would still be drawn to the challenge, to the purity of competition stripped to its essence, to the chance to test themselves against the absolute limits of human capability with everything at stake. The ancient Olympic spirit, for better or worse, isn't completely dead. It lives in every athlete who values the triumph more than the prize, the achievement more than the reward, the eternal glory more than momentary pain. Just be grateful you can pursue that spirit wearing proper shoes, with medical support nearby, and without having to cover yourself in olive oil first. Some traditions are better left in the past, no matter how historically authentic they might be.